Imagine this, you meet her, and something in you shifts. Not because of her beauty, not because of what she says, but because of something deeper, something irrational, something ancient. It's not love, not quite lust. It's something in between, magnetic, terrifying, irresistible. She doesn't even need to try. One glance, one pause, one laugh, slightly delayed, and suddenly, your mind isn't your own anymore. You find yourself wondering what she's doing, replaying things she said, feeling an invisible thread connecting you to her, even if she's a stranger, even if you barely know her. Why? Why this woman? Why that kind of woman? Why the obsession, the fantasy, the confusion? Why do you feel like you've known her forever, even if you've just met? Why do you feel like losing her would feel like losing yourself? Here's the paradox Jung invites you to confront. You don't fall in love with her. You fall in love with the parts of yourself that you've disowned, and she carries them for you. You are not drawn to her because she completes you. You are drawn to her because she reminds you of everything you once were and buried, of everything you want to be, and fear of the wild, chaotic, sacred energy that you've spent your whole life suppressing. Jung called it the anima, the feminine energy buried in the psyche of every man. Not female, feminine, the part of you that feels, the part that dreams, the part that surrenders, the part that loves without control. And when you meet a woman who embodies this energy, even just a sliver of it, you don't just desire her, you recognize her, like a ghost from your unconscious, like a mirror held up to your soul. But that recognition is not peace, it is fire, because she doesn't just awaken your desire, she awakens everything in you that's been exiled. The erotic is not just sexual, it's psychological. What you call chemistry may not be attraction at all. It may be a summoning. She brings forth the parts of you that have been asleep, your depth, your chaos, your longing to feel again. You mistake her for the answer, but she is the question, a living reminder of the unlived life inside you. That's why it feels spiritual, and that's why it hurts. Because you're not just chasing her, you're chasing wholeness. And without realizing it, you put her in charge of everything you've lost access to. Your emotionality, your vulnerability, your aliveness, and sometimes, even your sanity. So the next time you're magnetized toward a woman you barely understand, don't just ask, what is it about her? Ask instead, what have I lost in myself that she now carries? Because what you call infatuation might just be your soul trying to come home. But beware. There's a reason Jung didn't romanticize the anima. He feared her, respected her, because she doesn't just seduce, she possesses. And unless you learn how to bring that power back into yourself, to make it conscious, to integrate it, you will remain haunted by her, by the memory of her, by the echo of her in every woman you meet after. So this isn't a love story, this is a reckoning with your projection, with your unmet self, with the truth hiding beneath your desire. Let's go deeper. Let's peel back the layers and examine. Where does this haunting come from? And why does it feel like fate? Desire rarely begins with her. It begins in you, or more precisely, in the parts of you you've forgotten exist. You think you're drawn to her because she's beautiful, because she's confident, because she's unlike anyone you've ever met. But beneath those surface-level reasons lies a much older story. A story you don't remember writing, because you didn't write it with words. You wrote it with wounds. The anima, she is you, in disguise. Carl Jung believed that every man carries within him an unconscious inner feminine, an energy he called the anima. This is not about gender or sexuality. It's about the psychic blueprint of your emotional reality, from your mother, from your early loves, from the media you consumed, from everything you wanted to feel but weren't allowed to. You formed an image, a dream, a phantom of the feminine, and you buried it deep inside your psyche, where it began to shape your idea of the woman. But here's the twist Jung warned us about. You don't fall in love with real women. You fall in love with the projection of your anima upon them. And until you become conscious of this projection, you are not choosing your attraction. You are being haunted by them. Projection, the ghost in the room. Think of it like this. You meet her and something clicks. But what clicks isn't truth. It's recognition. Your unconscious looks at her and says, she reminds me of something I lost, something I need, something I crave. And so you don't just see her, you overlay her with meaning. You assign her mythic power. You elevate her to symbol status. She becomes your muse, your salvation, your mirror, your drug, but not because of who she is, because of what she activates. Why you're drawn to her type again and again. Ever wonder why you keep falling for the same kind of woman even when logic screams at you not to? Even when it ends the same way every time? Jung would say it's because your anima projection is unresolved. The energy she carries for you, your repressed sensitivity, vulnerability, chaos, sensuality, creativity has not yet been made conscious. So it seeks resolution outwardly. Over and over and over, each new woman becomes a canvas for your lost self, but no one can carry your soul for you. And so each love eventually collapses under the weight of expectation. You don't lose her, you lose the fantasy. And the tragedy? You keep chasing another version of the same woman, hoping this time the story will end differently. But stories don't end differently when the script never changes. The cultural setup, why you were never taught to see her or yourself. Let's not pretend this dynamic is your fault. It's not just psychological, it's cultural. You were raised in a world that told you vulnerability is weakness, emotions are threats, feminine energy is something to dominate, not understand. And so your own inner feminine, your capacity to feel deeply, to surrender, to create, to intuit, to weep, became foreign territory. You buried it, and what is buried becomes magnetic. You begin searching for it in women. You want them to be your emotional home. You want them to carry what you've disowned. And when they don't, you feel betrayed, not because they hurt you, but because they failed to complete you. Schopenhauer and the will behind desire. Arthur Schopenhauer had his own brutal take. Love is an illusion that tricks the individual into fulfilling the blind will of the species. He believed what you call romance is often biological machinery, an unconscious strategy to produce the strongest offspring, to combine desirable traits. But while Schopenhauer saw this process as cold and mechanical, Jung gave it symbolic dimension. He saw attraction as not just physical, but psycho-spiritual. Your body may crave her, but your psyche craves integration, a return to inner balance, to wholeness. She is not just hot, she is holy, because she represents something you lack, not sexually, existentially. The danger of unconscious attraction. Let's be clear, attraction isn't the problem. Unconscious attraction is because it enslaves you. You mistake your soul's longing for connection with another person. But what your soul truly longs for is reunion with itself. Until you do the inner work, until you integrate your own anima, until you reclaim the parts of you that feel too wild, too tender, too broken, too real, you will continue projecting that work onto women. And every relationship will become an attempt to outsource your wholeness. The hidden problem, summarized. Let's summarize the core of what Jung warned us about. You are not just attracted to her. You are attracted to the symbol she has become. She is the mirror of your unconscious. The chaos you feel is not love, it's an internal conflict, externalized. Until you retrieve your own lost self, you will seek it in others. And no woman, no matter how magical, can give it back to you. So now the question becomes, what happens when you keep living in projection? When you keep mistaking emotional hunger for spiritual chemistry? When you keep calling soul fragments true love? Let's go there. Let's examine the hidden cost of this cycle. The unseen consequences of falling for your own reflection in someone else. At first, it feels like love, the kind you write about, the kind that makes you forget where you are, who you were, and what you thought you wanted. But slowly, subtly, it starts to hurt. Not because she changed, not because anything went wrong, but because the illusion begins to fade, and with it, the high. This is the first unseen consequence of falling in love with your own projection. You lose her the moment she stops reflecting the fantasy. 1. You stop seeing the real person. When you project your anima onto her, when she becomes the screen for your soul's missing pieces, you don't love her. You love the mirror she holds, the symbol, the myth. But no human being can sustain being a symbol forever. Eventually, she says something out of character. She reveals a boundary. She doesn't respond the way your unconscious needs her to. She becomes human. And suddenly the magic fades, not because she stopped being beautiful, but because she stopped being yours. Not yours in reality, but yours in fantasy. 2. You confuse. Longing with love projection isn't intimacy, it's obsession. It feels deep, but it's hollow. It feels passionate, but it's ungrounded. You mistake the adrenaline of recognition for the depth of connection. You mistake the ache for her as evidence that this must be real. But as Carl Jung warned, we always see our own unavowed mistakes in our opponent. In the same way, we also see our unfulfilled dreams in our lovers. We don't connect. We collapse into them, into the fantasy, into the escape from ourselves. This collapse creates a kind of emotional fusion that feels sacred but is really psychic dependency. 3. You repeat emotional patterns. You don't understand. Have you noticed the cycle? You meet her. It's intense. It consumes you. And then it breaks. You tell yourself it's her fault, that she was unstable, confusing, avoidant, too much, not enough. But if you zoom out, the pattern becomes undeniable. The women change, but the story stays the same. This is the curse of the unintegrated anima. Until you make her conscious, your inner feminine will keep surfacing in dreams and fantasies and projections disguised as the next woman, and the next, and the next. Each one a messenger, each one a reminder. You haven't done the inner work yet. 4. You become emotionally addicted. There's a specific kind of man Jung saw again and again in his patients. The man who becomes hooked on anima-possessed relationships, not because he's weak, but because he is spiritually starved. The woman becomes a portal to feeling, to depth, to aliveness. He needs her the way an addict needs a fix, not because of who she is, but because of what he can't access without her. And so he'll endure emotional chaos, he'll rationalize toxicity, he'll mistake pain for proof of meaning, because without her, without that feeling, he feels empty again. But it's not her absence that hurts. It's the collapse back into himself where nothing is integrated, where the fire has gone out. You sabotage healthy love. Here's the most ironic part. Once you've been intoxicated by projection, real intimacy feels boring. When a woman sees you clearly, not your mask, not your potential, but you might feel nothing. Because she doesn't activate your fantasy. She doesn't trigger the old wound. She doesn't play the archetype your shadow is addicted to. So you leave, or push her away, or tell yourself, she's nice, but the spark isn't there. And you go looking again, not for love, but for the emotional high you've confused with destiny. 6. You build an identity around romantic pain. Over time, if this continues, a darker consequence emerges. You begin to define yourself by your heartbreak. You start believing you're just the kind of man who feels too much, loves too hard, always gets hurt. You don't realize you're not being punished, you're being invited to wake up. Your repeated heartbreak is not karma, it's curriculum, it's the soul trying to get your attention. Every collapse is an initiation, a crack in the illusion, a tear in the mask. And beneath it, a door, the pain that opens the psyche. Jung believed that breakdowns, heartbreak, even psychosis weren't always pathological. Sometimes they're spiritual eruptions. Your unconscious gets tired of being ignored. It wants reunion. It wants you to stop outsourcing your soul. It wants you to come back to yourself, but if you don't listen, it uses pain, because pain is honest. Pain doesn't lie. Pain wakes you up. The core consequence, emotional homelessness. In the end, the greatest consequence of projection isn't just romantic, it's existential. You go through life feeling like something is missing. You ache for connection, but no one feels quite right. Not because they aren't enough, but because you're still looking for someone to complete what was never missing. The anima was never out there. She's in you, waiting, bleeding, shouting through dreams, desires, and dysfunctional patterns. And until you listen, you'll keep chasing ghosts and calling them love. So the question now becomes, how do you stop chasing the phantom? How do you reclaim the parts of yourself you've buried in your lovers? How do you integrate your anima and finally become whole? It's time to rebel, not against her, not against desire, but against the spell you've been under. Let's explore how to break free. Let's talk about the rebellion and the return to your true self. What if the most sacred thing you could ever do was stop chasing her? Not out of bitterness, not out of fear, but out of reverence for a truth so deep, so forgotten that it has been screaming through every woman you've ever fallen for. She is not your home. You are. This is the rebellion Jung invites you into. Not a rebellion against women or desire or attraction, but a rebellion against illusion. a rebellion against projection, a rebellion against the lie that you are only complete when someone else carries your soul for you. Step 1. Interrupt the fantasy. The first act of liberation is brutally simple. Name the pattern. She walks into the room. You feel the spark. You call it chemistry, but pause. Ask, is this desire or is this recognition? Do I see her or do I see my reflection? The rebellion begins the moment you stop believing your instincts are always sacred. Because sometimes your instinct is not truth, it's trauma, it's repetition. It's the old myth looking for a new actor. And if you don't catch it, you'll write the same story again and call it fate. Step 2. Meet your anima consciously. You've projected her outward for long enough. Now it's time to bring her home. How? By turning inward, not into the abstract, but into your actual embodied experience. Start by asking, what qualities am I always drawn to in women? What do they awaken in me that I cannot awaken alone? Where in my life have I exiled those same qualities? Maybe you're drawn to chaos, to mystery, to warmth, to deep feeling, to artistic madness, to the nurturing presence you never received. Don't shame the desire, decode it, because those women are messengers. They carry the blueprint of your own neglected wholeness. And until you retrieve that blueprint from the projection, you'll keep handing the sacred task of your evolution to someone else. Step 3. Begin shadow dialogue. Jung called this process active imagination, a way of conversing with the unconscious directly. It doesn't require rituals or doctrine, just space, silence, and honesty. Sit with yourself. Picture the feminine figure you always chase, not her face, but her energy. And then, talk to her. Ask, why do you keep appearing? What are you trying to show me about myself? What parts of me have I made you responsible for? And then, listen. It might sound strange. It might feel uncomfortable. But this is how integration begins. Not with logic, but with communion. The anima is not a puzzle to solve. She is a presence to understand. Step 4. Stop outsourcing your emotional life. This is where things get real. You must stop asking women to carry what you refuse to feel. Don't seek her for validation. Feel your own unworthiness and stay with it. Don't seek her for meaning. Find your own path, your own flame, your own why. Don't seek her to awaken your heart. Open your own ribcage and breathe yourself back to life. Because here's the truth. If she becomes your therapist, your god, your muse, you've made her a hostage to your unconscious. And that's not love. That's projection. That's possession. To break free, you must become emotionally sovereign. Feel everything. Let nothing stay buried. Become a man who no longer needs her to meet the parts of himself he's terrified to face. Step 5. Reclaim the feminine within. This is the heart of the rebellion. You do not become whole by rejecting feminine energy. You become whole by embodying it, not performatively, but psychically, spiritually. Can you sit with emotion without numbing it? Can you hold space without fixing? Can you receive without earning it? Can you weep without shame? Can you create without needing applause? Can you soften without collapsing? These are not weaknesses. They are sacred powers, and every woman you've fallen for was trying to show you. This lives inside you too. Step 6. Practice real relationship, not fantasy bonding. Once you begin the inner integration, something beautiful and terrifying happens. You start seeing women clearly, not as mirrors, not as mothers, not as goddesses, but as people. And in that clarity, love becomes real. It becomes grounded. It becomes a choice, not a compulsion. You'll be able to stand in front of a woman and feel the spark, and instead of collapsing into her, you'll stand tall in yourself. You'll meet her as a man who is no longer looking to be rescued, but ready to connect. Not because you need her, but because you've already met yourself. And now, anything more is a gift, not a fix. Final reflection. The true anima is not a woman. She is the part of you that you abandoned when the world told you men should not feel, should not need, should not break, should not weep, should not dream, should not be. She's been with you the whole time. She's not out there. She's in here. And the women you were drawn to? They were never the answer. They were the invitation. Now the invitation is this. Come back. Reclaim what you once gave away. And watch how everything changes, not just in your love life, but in your sense of self. Because once you stop chasing her, you finally catch you. But there's still one more step. One final, powerful realization that ties it all together. A truth so disruptive, so liberating, it changes not just how you see attraction, but how you see reality itself. Let's go there, to the ultimate truth, the final door. Imagine standing in front of her and feeling nothing but clarity, not absence, not indifference, but something higher, the sacred stillness that arrives when longing dies, not because you've stopped loving, but because you've stopped searching. You no longer ache for her to see you. You no longer crave her energy to awaken yours. You no longer need her to complete what was never missing. You are whole, and in that wholeness you can finally love without possession. You can finally see without projection. You can finally feel without fear. This is the ultimate truth Jung hinted at in every page of his work, a truth that doesn't just change how you relate to women, but how you relate to existence itself. You were never chasing her. You were always chasing yourself, the forgotten you, buried under the weight of who you thought you had to be. The self, not a role, but a reunion. Jung called this final stage individuation, the sacred process of becoming your true self. Not the persona, not the wounded boy, not the lover, the achiever, the performer, but the one who contains all of it. The chaos and the calm, the rational and the wild, the masculine and the feminine. Not balanced, integrated, not opposing halves, but dancing forces, partners in wholeness. And when that integration happens, you stop seeking wholeness in another person. You become the container of your own fire. You become the love story you were trying to live through someone else. The anima becomes a guide, not a ghost. At this stage, the anima no longer seduces you unconsciously. She no longer hijacks your relationships. She no longer appears as a woman you can't stop thinking about, aching for, collapsing into. She becomes a symbol, a bridge between the known and the unknown, a whisper from your deeper psyche, a guide. She shows up in your dreams, your creativity, your intuition, not to torment you, to awaken you. You begin to understand every woman you've ever fallen for wasn't the one. She was the mirror. And when the mirror is no longer needed, you finally see what was behind it all along. You. The collapse of illusion equals the rise of truth. You now understand why the projections hurt so much when they broke, because you thought you lost her, but what you really lost was the fantasy. And fantasies are beautiful, but they are not love. They are longing for love. Love, real, sacred, grounded love, only becomes possible once the illusion dies. Because love without projection is not fragile. It's not clingy. It's not volatile. It's generous. It flows not because it needs, but because it overflows. That kind of love can only emerge from someone who is already full, already whole, already home. What you were really looking for. Let's be honest, you weren't really looking for her. You were looking for permission to feel, a reason to be vulnerable, a place to break, a spark that made life feel alive again, a touch that didn't judge, a presence that made your inner child feel safe. She became the channel, the catalyst, but not the source. The source was always within, and the tragedy is how long it took to believe that. But the miracle, you're here now. You see it, you feel it, and that changes everything. You stop asking, does she like me? The final sign that the work is complete, or rather has begun in earnest, is this shift in your question. You no longer ask, does she like me? You ask, can I remain myself in her presence? Can I stay whole while opening to another? Can I love without collapsing? Because you're no longer trying to be chosen. You've already chosen yourself. And when two people who have chosen themselves come together, what they create is not codependence. It's art, it's ceremony, it's aliveness. This is not the end, it's the beginning. You're not healed, you're healing. You're not done, you're returning. And the journey ahead is still full of feeling, falling, forgetting. But now, you fall with awareness. You love with presence. You desire with discernment. You don't run from the spark, you respect it. You don't worship her, you witness her. You don't use her to feel alive, you come alive beside her. That is the difference between projection and relationship. That is the difference between craving and connection. Final reflection. You are always worth coming home to. So now if she appears again, if you meet someone who makes the ground shake, the heart pound, the soul stir, let that feeling arise. Let it move through you, let it open your chest, but don't mistake her for the destination. She's a reflection, a reminder, A radiant nudge inward, the one you were always meant to meet, was you. Not the version performing for love, not the version begging for wholeness, not the version starving for recognition, but the version that remembers you were never half. You only forgot. And now finally you can stop running. You can stop chasing her ghost through the bodies of strangers. You can stop mistaking fire for fate. Because you've remembered she is not your source. She is not your savior. She is not your soul. You are. And that is the most powerful realization of all. Right now there are 2 videos on your screen handpicked just for you. Click to watch them. I'm sure you'll love every second.